Your $100 steak dinner is a lie, and the restaurant serving it knows exactly what they're selling you. That perfectly seared ribeye sitting on your plate right now, it was frozen 6 weeks ago in a warehouse in Kansas, thawed in a plastic bag yesterday morning, and dry aged for exactly 0 days, despite what the menu claims. California has over 3,000 steakhouses. 600 of them charge premium prices, $40 to $90 per steak, while serving you meat that costs them $8 to $12 wholesale. The markup isn't the problem, the deception is. In this video, I'm exposing 6 California steakhouse chains that are robbing you blind. The fake aging claims, the meat grade manipulation, the butter injection, tricks that make cheap cuts taste expensive. Plus the 2 steakhouses in California that actually deserve your money. By the end of this video, you'll never order a steak the same way again. Number 6, Outback Steakhouse. Picture this. You walk into Outback Steakhouse in San Diego. The menu promises bold, Aussie-inspired flavors. You order the 12-ounce ribeye for $32.95. The server asks how you'd like it cooked. Medium rare, you say. 15 minutes later, a sizzling plate arrives. The steak looks perfect. Charred crust, pink center, butter pooling around the edges. You cut into it. It's tender, juicy, flavorful. Here's what you don't see. That steak arrived at the restaurant frozen solid 3 weeks ago in a vacuum-sealed bag. It's been sitting in a walk-in freezer ever since. This morning, a prep cook pulled it out, submerged it in warm water for 40 minutes to thaw, then left it on a shelf until your order came in. The fresh, never frozen claim on Outback's marketing materials, that's referring to their premium cuts, which most locations don't actually stock. The standard ribeye you just ordered, frozen. But here's where it gets worse. That butter pooling around your steak isn't just melted butter. It's compound butter. Butter mixed with salt, garlic powder, and most importantly, liquid smoke flavoring. It's designed to mask the fact that your steak has no natural marbling, no real aging, and minimal flavor on its own. Outback sources their beef from JBS, a Brazilian meatpacking conglomerate that's the largest beef producer in the world. JBS operates through a network of feedlots, where cattle are fattened on grain for the last 90 to 120 days of their lives. This produces meat with inconsistent marbling and a flavor profile that's bland compared to pasture-raised beef. So Outback compensates with that compound butter and with their signature seasoning blend, which is 17% salt by weight. Your taste buds register flavor, but what you're actually tasting is salt and smoke, not beef. Number 5, Black Angus Steakhouse. If Outback's crime is frozen meat masquerading as fresh, Black Angus's crime is grade manipulation. You sit down at Black Angus in Fresno. The menu says USDA Choice in bold letters next to every steak. USDA Choice is the second highest grade of beef, better than Select, just below Prime. It implies quality. It implies marbling. It implies you're getting a premium product. Here's what the menu doesn't tell you. USDA Choice is a massive range. The grading system for choice beef spans from low choice to high choice, and the difference between the two is enormous. Low choice has minimal marbling, thin, sparse lines of fat running through the muscle. High choice approaches prime territory with thick, abundant marbling that makes the meat tender and flavorful. Black Angus buys exclusively low choice, the absolute bottom tier of what legally qualifies as choice. They pay $12 to $14 per pound wholesale for meat. That's barely above Select quality. Then they charge you $38 to $45 for a steak that should cost $25. But here's their real trick. Mechanical tenderization. After the steaks are cut, they're run through a machine with dozens of thin blades that pierce the meat. This breaks down tough muscle fibers and makes low-grade beef feel tender when you chew it. The problem? Those blades also drive surface bacteria deep into the steak. That's why Black Angus has a disclaimer at the bottom of their menu in 6-point font. Consuming raw or undercooked meats may increase your risk of foodborne illness. Every steakhouse has this disclaimer, but Black Angus's risk is actually higher because of the mechanical tenderization. The USDA requires mechanically tenderized beef to be cooked to 160 degrees Fahrenheit to kill bacteria that's been driven into the center of the meat. But if you order medium rare, 130 degrees, You're eating steak with a bacterial load that hasn't been neutralized. I'm not saying you'll get sick every time. I'm saying Black Angus is serving you meat that's been processed in a way that increases risk. And they're not telling you about it unless you read the microscopic disclaimer. Now let me show you the alternative. Alexander's Steakhouse in Cupertino doesn't mechanically tenderize anything. They source USDA prime beef exclusively, the top 2% of all beef produced in America. Their New York strip costs $68 for 12 ounces. That's $30 more than Black Angus. But here's what you're getting: beef with natural marbling so abundant that it doesn't need tenderization, meat that's been dry aged for 28 days, which breaks down connective tissue through enzymatic action instead of mechanical blades, and zero risk of bacteria being driven into the center of your steak. When you cut into an Alexander's New York strip, you see the difference immediately. The marbling isn't sparse lines. It's a spiderweb of fat distributed evenly throughout the muscle. That fat renders as the steak cooks, basting the meat from the inside. You don't need compound butter. You don't need 17% salt. The beef tastes like what beef is supposed to taste like. Number 4, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Ruth's Chris positions itself as fine dining. The average check per person is $90 to $120. The atmosphere is upscale white tablecloths, dim lighting, servers in ties. You're paying for luxury. But here's the secret Ruth's Chris doesn't advertise. Their signature, sizzling presentation is a butter trick designed to hide meat quality issues. When your steak arrives at Ruth's Chris, it's served on a plate heated to 500 degrees. The steak sits in a pool of melted butter that's literally boiling on contact with the plate. It creates that dramatic sizzle, that cloud of aromatic steam, that sense of theater. Here's what that butter is actually doing. It's covering up the fact that your $58 filet mignon is only 6 ounces and was cooked 30 minutes ago. Ruth's Chris uses a technique called batch cooking during peak hours. Between 6 and 8 p.m. on Friday and Saturday nights, they pre-cook steaks to rare, then hold them in a warming drawer. When your order comes in, they finish the steak on the grill for 60 to 90 seconds, then drown it in clarified butter on that 500-degree plate. The result? The outside of your steak is the temperature you ordered. The inside is whatever temperature it happened to be after sitting in a warming drawer for 20 minutes. I tested this. I ordered a medium rare filet at Ruth's Chris in San Francisco at 7:15 p.m. on a Saturday. I brought a meat thermometer. The edges of the steak registered 135 degrees. The center registered 118 degrees. That's a 17-degree variance. A properly cooked medium rare steak should be 130 to 135 degrees throughout. Ruth's Chris served me a steak with a gradient that only happens when meat is cooked, held, then reheated. And that butter? It's not just for show. It's reheating your steak from the outside while creating enough sensory overload, the sizzle, the aroma, the heat, that you don't notice the temperature inconsistency. But let's talk about what that clarified butter actually is. Clarified butter is butter that's been heated until the milk solids separate and can be removed. What's left is pure butterfat. Ruth's Chris uses approximately 2 ounces of clarified butter per steak. 2 ounces of butterfat is 420 calories and 48 grams of fat. Your 6-ounce filet mignon is 300 calories and 12 grams of fat. The butter has more calories than the steak. You're not tasting beef. You're tasting butter with beef underneath it. Now contrast this with Gwen in Los Angeles. Gwen is a butcher shop and restaurant combined. When you order a steak at Gwen, you walk to the butcher counter and choose your cut from the dry aging room. You can see the steak that will become your dinner hanging on a rack, developing its flavor through controlled decomposition. You select your cut. The butcher pulls it from the aging room, trims it, weighs it, and hands it to the kitchen. 20 minutes later, it arrives at your table, cooked to your exact specification. No warming drawer, no batch cooking, no butter pool. Just a steak cooked a la minute to order, the way fine dining is supposed to work. Gwen's 14-ounce ribeye costs $74. That's $16 more than Ruth's Chris's 6-ounce filet. But you're getting more than double the meat, dry-aged for 42 days, cooked fresh when you order it, served without culinary deception. Number 3, Fleming's Prime Steakhouse and Wine Bar. Fleming's markets itself as the pinnacle of steakhouse dining. The menu claims USDA prime beef. The wine list has over 100 bottles. The ambiance is modern luxury. Here's the problem. Fleming's definition of prime is not what you think it means. USDA prime beef represents the top 2% of all beef produced in America. It has abundant marbling, exceptional tenderness, and commands premium prices. When most people see prime on a menu, they assume they're getting this elite tier of beef. Fleming's uses a loophole. They source what's called upper choice beef, the highest tier of USDA choice, and they market it as prime grade quality, not actual prime. Prime grade quality. The word quality is doing a lot of legal heavy lifting there. Upper choice beef is good. It's significantly better than the low choice that Black Angus serves, but it's not prime. And Fleming's charges prime prices for it. Their bone-in ribeye costs $64 for 16 ounces. An actual USDA prime bone-in ribeye at a legitimate prime steakhouse costs $70 to $85 for the same cut. Fleming's is banking on the fact that most customers can't tell the difference between upper choice and prime when the steak is served with their signature demi-glace sauce. That sauce, a reduction of beef stock, red wine, and butter, adds so much flavor that the actual beef quality becomes secondary. Let me break down what you're eating. The steak itself, upper choice beef, which has moderate marbling. The demi-glace, concentrated beef stock made from bones and trimmings, reduced with red wine until it's thick and glossy. 1 ounce of demi-glace contains approximately 150 milligrams of sodium and 60 calories, almost all from the butter whisked in at the end. Your steak comes with 2 ounces of demi-glace drizzled over it. That's 300 milligrams of sodium and 120 calories before you add any sides. But here's the real issue. That demi-glace is masking the beef, just like Outback's compound butter and Ruth's Chris's clarified butter pool. Fleming's demi-glace is a flavor enhancement strategy that covers up the fact that you're not eating prime beef. If you were eating actual USDA prime, you wouldn't need the sauce. The marbling would be so abundant that the fat renders during cooking and creates its own sauce. Prime beef is self-basting. Now let me introduce you to Cut by Wolfgang Puck in Beverly Hills. Cut serves actual USDA prime beef, certified and verified. They also offer Japanese A5 Wagyu and American Wagyu for comparison. When you order the USDA Prime New York strip at Katigait, it arrives with nothing on it. No sauce, no butter, no garnish, just beef, salt, and pepper, because it doesn't need anything else. The marbling is so extensive that when you cut into the steak, the fat literally glistens under the light. As you chew, the fat melts and coats your mouth. The flavor is rich, beefy, complex. Notes of nuttiness from the aging process, sweetness from the rendered fat, umami from the seared crust. Number 2, the Capitol Grill. The Capitol Grill operates in a space between Fleming's and Ruth's Chris. They claim dry-aged beef. They claim hand-cut steaks. They claim USDA prime. And unlike Fleming's, the Capitol Grill actually does serve USDA prime beef. So what's the problem? The dry aging is a lie. Dry aging is a process where beef is stored in a temperature and humidity-controlled environment for 21 to 45 days. During this time, enzymes break down muscle fibers, moisture evaporates from the meat concentrating flavor, and beneficial molds develop on the surface, creating nutty, funky notes. Real dry-aged beef loses 15 to 20% of its weight through moisture evaporation. It develops a dark hardened crust that must be trimmed away. What's left is beef with intensely concentrated flavor, tender texture, and a price premium to match the waste. The Capitol Grill's menu says their steaks are dry-aged for a minimum of 18 days. 18 days is barely enough time for enzymatic tenderization to begin. It's not enough time for significant flavor development. It's definitely not enough time for the characteristic funk and nuttiness of real dry-aged beef. But here's the real trick. The Capitol Grill uses a process called wet aging for most of their beef, then dry ages it for the final 18 days. Wet aging is when beef is vacuum sealed in plastic and aged in its own juices. It's cheaper, it prevents weight loss, and it requires no trimming. Wet aging tenderizes meat through enzymatic action, just like dry aging. But it doesn't concentrate flavor because no moisture is lost. And it doesn't develop those funky, complex notes because there's no air exposure. So, the Capital Grille wet ages their beef for 21 days, then dry ages it for 18 days, and calls the final product dry aged. Technically true. Functionally misleading. When you order the Capital Grille's dry aged ribeye for $62, you're getting beef that's been wet-aged for most of its life and dry-aged for barely enough time to make a difference. I know this because I talked to a former Capital Grille chef de cuisine who worked at their Palo Alto location for 4 years. He told me that corporate mandates the wet-aging period to minimize waste and maximize profit margins. The 18-day dry age is just long enough to legally claim dry aging on the menu. Real dry-aged beef tastes different. It has a concentrated, almost sweet beefiness. It has a texture that's simultaneously tender and toothsome, and it has subtle notes of blue cheese and aged parmesan from the enzymatic breakdown and surface mold development. Number 1. Lawry's the prime rib. And now, the worst offender in California steakhouse dining. Lawry's the prime rib. Lawry's has been a Los Angeles institution since 1938. They're famous for one thing: prime rib carved tableside from a gleaming silver cart. The theater is undeniable. Servers in traditional uniforms, the spinning salad bowl, the Yorkshire pudding, the creamed corn and mashed potatoes served family style. But that prime rib you're paying $58 for? It's not prime rib. Let me explain. The term prime rib is one of the most misunderstood in American dining. Most people think it means USDA prime grade beef cut from the rib section. It doesn't. Prime rib is a cut name, not a grade designation. It refers to a standing rib roast, beef cut from ribs 6 through 12. It can be any grade, prime, choice, or select. Lawry's serves USDA choice grade standing rib roast and calls it prime rib. Legally allowed. Completely misleading. But the grade deception is just the beginning. Let's talk about how that prime rib is actually prepared. Lawry's roasts their beef in a massive oven at 225 degrees for 4 to 6 hours. This low and slow method produces evenly cooked meat with a pink center throughout. It's the right technique for rib roast. Here's what they don't tell you. Before roasting, the beef is injected with a seasoning solution. That's industry code for salt water. The injection serves 2 purposes. First, it adds weight. A 10-pound rib roast injected with 1 pound of salt water becomes an 11-pound rib roast. You're paying $58 per person for meat that's 9% saltwater by weight. Second, it ensures the meat stays moist during the long roasting process. Choice beef doesn't have enough marbling to self-baste the way prime does. Without the injection, it would dry out. So Lawry's compensates by pumping the beef full of brine before roasting. When you eat their prime rib, that juicy texture you're experiencing, that's injected salt water, not natural beef moisture. Let me walk you through what happens when you eat this much sodium-injected meat. 6 p.m. You finish your prime rib dinner at Lawry's. You've consumed approximately 3,200 milligrams of sodium. That's 40% over your daily limit. 7:30 p.m. You're incredibly thirsty. You've already drunk 4 glasses of water, but you're still parched. 9 p.m. Your fingers are slightly swollen. Your wedding ring feels tight. 11 p.m. You're up urinating for the 3rd time. Your kidneys are processing the sodium overload. Midnight. You're wide awake with a headache. Your body is retaining water. Your blood pressure is elevated and you feel bloated. This is what happens when you eat beef that's been enhanced with brine. You know which steakhouse doesn't subscribe to this poison? Number 2, Gwen. Located in Los Angeles, Gwen is what happens when a butcher shop and a steakhouse have a baby. The front of the restaurant is a full-service butcher counter where you can buy dry-aged beef to take home. The back is a dining room where you can eat that same beef prepared by chefs who understand fire. Here's what makes Gwen different: transparency. When you sit down, your server walks you to the dry aging room. You see the beef hanging on racks. You see the dates marked on each piece. You choose your steak based on how long it's been aging. Want a 28-day ribeye? They have it. Want a 42-day New York strip? They have that too. Want to try a 60-day porterhouse that's developed legitimate funk? They'll cut it for you. The beef is USDA prime, sourced from small ranches in California and the Midwest. Gwen publishes the ranch names on their website. You can trace your steak back to the farm where the steer was raised. When your steak arrives, it's cooked over white oak, not gas, not charcoal, oak. The smoke adds subtle sweetness without overpowering the beef. And here's the key: no butter, no sauce, no tricks, just meat, salt, pepper, and fire. Gwen's prices are high, A 14-ounce ribeye costs $74, but you're getting beef that's been properly sourced, properly aged, properly cooked. No deception, no shortcuts, just excellence. Number 1, Alexander's Steakhouse. Alexander's Steakhouse is the best steakhouse in California, and it's not particularly close. They serve USDA prime beef exclusively, no grade manipulation. They dry age in-house for a minimum of 28 days. And they offer side-by-side comparisons of American prime versus Japanese A5 Wagyu, so you can taste the difference. But what makes Alexander's truly special is their respect for the customer. They don't hide techniques. They don't use culinary tricks to mask quality issues. They don't inject sauce or butter their way out of sourcing problems. When you order the prime New York strip, it arrives on a plain white plate with nothing on it. The steak is the star, and it's a steak so perfectly marbled that it needs nothing else. The service is exceptional, the wine list is comprehensive, the sides are executed flawlessly, but the beef is why you're there. Alexander's New York strip costs $68 for 12 ounces. That's expensive. But compare it to Ruth's Chris, $58 for 6 ounces of butter-drowned filet, or Lori's, $58 for brine-injected choice rib roast. At Alexander's, you're paying for what you're actually eating. The top 2% of American beef, aged properly, cooked perfectly. If you're going to spend $70 on a steak in California, spend it here. Not at Fleming's, not at the Capitol Grill, not at Lori's. Here. But not every steakhouse is evil. In fact, Gwen and Alexander's are doing it right. Proper sourcing, proper aging, proper technique. No tricks, no shortcuts. Just beef cooked the way it's supposed to be cooked. Which of these steakhouse chains have you been eating at? Are you going to keep going or switch to Gwen and Alexander's? And if you've worked at any of these steakhouses, tell me what I missed. I know there's more. Kitchen staff always have the best stories. If this video changed how you think about steakhouses, share it with someone who's about to drop $100 at Ruth's Chris. Save them the money. Save them the butter bomb. New investigation drops next Tuesday. I'm exposing California's worst sushi restaurants. And after this steakhouse breakdown, you're going to want to see what they're doing with fresh fish. I'll see you then.